All right, we're back, and I can only make it 8 minutes and 42 seconds. I had to start episode 2 now. Arm yourself, it's called, and there's some very interesting information. This is really, well, I mean, it's a shout out to our top tier Patreon and longtime supporter Mike. He knows probably will understand this better than Mo. Okay, so I came across. Uh, uh, you've been along for the ride the longest, so this should resonate the most. So Passio has his thought experiment that we can all do. Long story short, it comes down to security, job. What's the first thing even going on a date? What's the first question? Inevitably, your partner, and a male-female dynamic. I can't speak for a male, female dynamic, and I know they exist, so I'm not addressing that. But keeping that in mind, mostly for Mike, from Passio's thought experiment, I really found this very interesting, and I wanted to share this and something else because it's quite obvious why I gravitate towards Mr. Peterson.
So, and of course, men are unbelievably motivated by status concerns because women primarily choose men on the basis of their perceived status. That's a bit misleading because women actually use status as a marker for productive generosity. So if you have to sum someone up quick, you might think, well, does he have resources? But the women aren't, unless they're unsophisticated, they're not really interested so much in the resources, although that's not nothing. What they're interested in is the ability to generate the resources, because that's a much better resource than just resources. You know, because you could have a useless guy who inherited a lot of money, you know, as opposed, say, to a guy who doesn't have a lot of money but whose prospects are bright. And a sensible woman will take the latter guy over the former and certainly be in much better condition to have a sustainable and enjoyable relationship.
Wow. So, and I'm not saying you have to agree, disagree. This is all, that thing. Man, it's okay, not as loose. We're trying to tighten it up. We lost a lot of weight, and now we're trying to tighten it all up. Not be an old bag of bones. I found that very interesting, and it hit on a Passio-esque level. So it actually brought me from the simple thought experiment from from Passio to as well put a position from Peterson, and everything in the middle. I mean, there you go. For me, that works. And then there's a section we do have to listen to.
Marriage disintegrates.
Where was it?
An older female who has something like the spirit of voluntary play.
No. So he touched on abundance.
Actually forced Paul Ehrlich, who wrote...
Here we go. I've had a position for a while, and I get on my high horse about it. So, oh, shoot. I unplugged my headphones. Okay, so I get on my high horse about it, and I'll be... I thought maybe I appeared to be too adamant about scarcity and abundance, but...
Until there's too many yeast for the meat.
Okay, yeah, so we're...
A number of very good books, 10 Global Trends, I think it's every...
There we go. I gotta share this part, and then episode 2, less than 10 minutes in, it's money. It is so powerful and good that, episode 2 is going to be based on the first 10 minutes. I haven't even finished more than that, and I can't. But this next section, well, once again to Mike, and it's basically rhetorical. I mean, I think we talked about this, but this is more of the lines of thinking that I align with. I'm once again not saying I'm right, but it's being put down by someone a little brighter than myself and much more well
demoralized.
said.
But it's a pack of lies right from the bottom up. People, then, well, why wouldn't they be demoralized? Obviously, the right response to that, if it's true, is to be demoralized. But it's a pack of lies right from the bottom up to the highest levels of abstraction. Talked to a man named Marion Tupy the other day. He wrote a number of very good books, 10 Global Trends I think it's every educated person should know. I really like that book. He just wrote another one published in August of 2022 called Superabundance. And he calculated, there's this idea, Malthusian idea, that there's too many people on the planet and that we're going to hit some kind of limit of growth and then we're all going to starve. And that was really a big idea in like 1967 with Paul Ehrlich, who believed that we were going to hit a population bottleneck by the year 2000, that there'd be starvation of hundreds of millions of people, and of course, and that commodities would shoot up in price and there'd be scarcity of everything. Typical Malthusian viewpoint, kind of based on analysis of yeast. If you put yeast into a medium, the yeast will multiply until there's too many yeast for the medium and then they all die. And that's a biological viewpoint, except only if you're simple-minded, because we aren't yeast and human beings are ingenious, which economists know perfectly well.
Wait, we're not just simple-celled organisms based on our emotions and eating and pooping.
There's this idea, Malthusian idea, that there's too many people on the planet and that we're going to hit some kind of limit of growth and then we're all going to starve. And that was really a big idea in like 1967 with Paul Ehrlich, who believed that we were going to hit a population bottleneck by the year 2000, that there'd be starvation of hundreds of millions of people, and of course, and that commodities would shoot up in price and there'd be scarcity of everything. Typical Malthusian viewpoint, kind of based on analysis of yeast. If you put yeast into a medium, the yeast will multiply until there's too many yeast for the medium and then they all die. And that's a biological viewpoint, except only if you're simple-minded, because we aren't yeast and human beings are ingenious, which economists know perfectly well, because the economists always scrap with the biologists about this. And there's no limit to the extent of human ingenuity, and there are no obvious limits to prosperity and abundance whatsoever, assuming that we're not stupid. Marion Tupy and his co-author analyzed historical data looking at the relationship between population expansion and abundance, which is a positive relationship in that as there have been more people born, since there have been more smart and competent people born, which is a necessary consequence of that, we've got richer, not poorer. And the Malthusians say, yeah, well, the other shoe will drop eventually. It's like, yeah, specify your time frame, buddy. You don't get to have an infinite expanse to prove your hypothesis correct. It's like,
so this is also why I rail away on doomsday cults. So if you can track, okay, in my personal opinion, if I could track my system of faith back to a doomsday cult that failed their prediction, it's, man, better reanalyze who you're listening to. I think a lot of ideas that are used against people are designed to terrify them at all points, at every which way. Terrify. And because they get so many of the doomsday predictions wrong. It's weird. What's the opposite of that? How many dystopian sci-fi predictions come true? There's something to think about for a second. I'm watching Akira again. It's on the shelf back there. Wow, that's hard on my brain. I'm watching it again, and it is so more. It works now, I think, better than the day it came out, and I mean that. If you like to think outside the box, visuals, ideas, because it's all over the place. You'd have to use the psychic children and Akira himself as metaphors for other stuff, control, power. But, it's all there. And it so applies to today, right? So I find that super interesting. And this is just...
Well, human beings might go extinct in 100 million years. It's like, well, probably we won't worry about that. And if you can't specify the time frame, then you have a useless hypothesis. And a man named Julian Simon actually forced Paul Ehrlich, who wrote The Population Bomb, into a corner because he bet him, and a famous bet, that by the year 2000, not only would there not be mass starvation, which there obviously wasn't, but that commodities would get cheaper rather than becoming more expensive. And he let Ehrlich, the biologist, pick the commodities, and Simon won the bet. And Tupy has extended that work to a basket of 50 commodities and has demonstrated now that each child born produces 7 times as much wealth as they consume.
So, if you live in a fear bubble and focus on mismanaged parts of the systems, yeah, you can find fault. I tend to use, the Singapore skyline as obvious evidence of human achievement. Then I kept looking outside of this country to what goals were set. And the only thing I see is right now, if it wasn't for a green control agenda, which are the same people that would like to cull us. It's ironic. Same people that you can prove they're full of shit, but they're running the show, right? There's your liberal world order. The people who think you should eat bugs and live in a tube and plug into metaverse. And none of those creations are what he's talking about here.
So enough with there are too many people on the planet, and human beings are a destructive force, and all male will is nothing but a cancer on the planet and part of the oppressive patriarchy. It's like, that's all. There isn't a shred of evidence for any of that, except that when human systems degenerate, which they do fairly frequently, they degenerate in the direction of allowance for the expression of power, arbitrary compulsion.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm a smoker. I am what I am. But there's another thing, I think. Talk about that. I mean, why do I not want anarchy? Or I tend to lean away from like libertarian and anarchist viewpoints. Well, I don't think anybody wants survival of the fittest. Because it goes on to explain that it's not actually the biggest and the strongest. Well, actually, it's very interesting. Let's let him finish this thought. And like I said, you're only... this is a snippet of the first 10 minutes. I cannot reiterate enough how refreshing for me the conversation is. Because if we noticed, he's going to give it up.
And so if your marriage disintegrates, you're going to start playing power games with each other. If your friendships disintegrate, same thing. Relationships between children and parents, if they're not optimized, they degenerate into power games. Same in business organizations and political communities. But the fact that our social systems can degenerate into power games doesn't mean that that's what they're predicated on. And I think the evidence... So Frans de Waal, great primatologist, has been studying chimpanzees for a very long time, and chimps have a patriarchal social structure in that the primary structure of a status relationship in the troop is male. There's female hierarchy as well, but the males are predominant, superordinate, unlike the bonobos, by the way, which are closely related. There's a trope that Marxist biologists established that hierarchies are dominance hierarchies, and the dominance hierarchy is dominated by the most dominant male, and that implies the male who's most willing to use arbitrary force and compulsion. But de Waal has shown very clearly that, well, that sometimes even the smallest male can become the alpha if he has, for example, the support of an older female who has very good social connections within the troop, and if he's extremely good at reciprocal interactions and reconciliation post-conflict, and that what establishes peace and tranquility and prosperity, let's say, among chimpanzees is peacemaking and reconciliation, friendship, essentially.
I found that interesting. In the end, I really liked that analysis. Now, I'm saying I'm positive there's a whole other group of thought on all of this, and some of the things he references I wouldn't say I know enough about, so I can't go with. I can't say I understand every single word with complete clarity, and I definitely don't know the counter arguments, which in well, inhibits me from knowing the complete story. But I have to admit, when I listen to all this, it resonates with what I think I've been saying. So, it's really cool for me, and I'm getting a heck of a lot out of this, and boy, I'm not a spokesperson for other stuff. I mean, I don't even want to sell myself, so I mean, how the hell am I going to sell this? But I'd say this is more beneficial to look into, right? I mean, I guess if I had to put my ass on the line, I'd say this is very helpful to me, and it could probably be very helpful to someone else. So I'd check into it if it resonates with you as well. I can be entertaining, but I can't be this informative. And that's cool. So I have nothing but respect. And I mean, the amount of bad press he got, and I don't know, I think I've shared enough. Undeserved bad press. And a wonderful thinker, communicator, and it's just a joy to listen to. And I'm going to go back to it now. But take care. Be back with part 3.